All right, YouTube, welcome to episode 4 of Out of the Shadows. So, last time we were talking about beliefs, how do we form them, and how can we go about changing beliefs that are disempowering to us? So, I wanted to share a belief that helped carry me through, the very difficult times, specifically with my depression. I told myself that I needed to learn to try. If I try to do something, I create the potential to succeed. If I do nothing, I'm guaranteed to stay exactly where I am, and there's no progress. If you try, just pure logic, maybe you succeed, maybe you get further, maybe you grow, maybe you start taking these steps. At the very least, there's the possibility of progress. If you do nothing, you're shutting the door to any hope or progress that you could potentially make. So, there's two driving forces, I would say, when it comes to human beings in terms of kind of how we live life in general. One is to try and avoid pain. The other is to try and gain pleasure. Now, everyone is going to do more to avoid pain than they will to try and gain pleasure, to try and succeed, to try and get a new job, to try and make more money, further their education, whatever. And why is that? A big part of it comes down to fear. If you hate your job, it makes perfect sense. Get another job. You're going to be happier. You're going to gain pleasure from that. But people get scared. Well, I know how this job is. What if the other job is too difficult? What if they don't take me? What if I can't handle it? All these what ifs we get caught up in them, and then all of a sudden the fear paralyzes us, and we stay where we are. Kind of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know type of thought process. And from an evolutionary standpoint, we're genetically hardwired to avoid pain. If you think about it going way back, early man, the saber-toothed tigers there, you're afraid. You need to avoid that pain. It's essentially avoid the potentiality of death. It's how we're made, and it's very hard to fight against that and kind of face those fears and move past them in order to try and further ourselves in any area of life. So it's definitely something to think about. I read that in a book quite a few years ago, and the more it kind of sets in, the more you're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Specifically with trying to avoid pain, if you're severely depressed, you might have the thought that, well, I'm going to be like this forever. I'm always going to be sad. I'm always going to be depressed. I'm always going to be limited. So what can I do? I might as well limit the amount of pain that I have to experience. Now life isn't about being happy or, realizing the full person that you could be or becoming the person you want to be. It just becomes, how can I experience less pain? And, that's not a totally bad thing. Nobody wants to be in pain. Obviously, there's medications designed specifically to keep people out of pain in terms of a surgery, or if you have a severe injury or whatever. But conversely, if you want to progress, you have to face that fear. And sometimes you have to learn that you need to be able to experience a finite amount of pain in order to gain a whole lot of pleasure, a whole lot of progress. People who are in phenomenal shape, the guys at the gym who are super ripped, who are really strong, who have awesome endurance, people who can run marathons, on a different level, entrepreneurs who make a lot of money, people who start a business from nothing and become, millionaires, or anyone with any real level of success. They went through a period of pain before they were able to get to where they were. Like I said very clearly with the example of someone gaining a better physique and becoming healthier, there's that initial pain of you're working hard, your muscles get fatigued, you don't want to keep going, but if you want those things, you have to dig deep and experience that pain for the moment. And then in time, all of a sudden, you're losing weight, you're able to run farther, you start feeling better. In terms of the entrepreneur example, maybe you're working super long hours and you're just barely making enough money to keep the doors open, but usually, if you keep at it, if you have this vision in front of you, your business can grow. It can become, a source of stable income. It could become more than that. You could become a millionaire. Now, I'm not saying in every instance that's going to happen. There are instances where you start a business and people have to, it was a bust. It didn't go through. That doesn't mean that you failed. That was an experience. You can learn something from that, and you can move on to the next project, whether that's another business, whether that's joining another company. You can take a lesson and, apply it to the next thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, I failed, I screwed up, like I should never do this again. Take it as a learning experience. Conor McGregor, basically, which is like famously said, you either win or you learn, and I think that's very true. If you lose in any situation, it's how you perceive it. If I, in that metaphor, if I lost in a boxing match or something like that, you could be the kind of person who starts pointing fingers and says, oh, well, the ref called it this way, or, whatever. Just kind of have a bad attitude, so to speak. But if you can be like, you know what, all right, I learned something from this. I need to develop this technique further. I need to know this about, this opponent. He's a bigger guy. The shots I threw out there would have taken down a smaller man. All right, now I learned something. I know what I need to do to get to that next level. And, that's why losing, it's an illusion in some ways. I mean, just because you're the one whose hand is raised at the end, or isn't raised rather, that doesn't mean that you lost. If you had the experiences go a long way. The first time you do something, you fail. Then you do it more, you learn more. There's a saying, the teacher has failed more than the student has ever tried. And that's the truth. To develop any skill, when you start, you're not good at it. How could you be? You're just starting. You're sloppy, it's awkward, and it takes time. It's the only way to learn and to grow. So, again, in terms of dismantling your negative beliefs, like I said, you need to fall back on logic. Logic is your friend. Often people who are thinking negative will try and replace those negative thoughts with a positive thought. And instead of saying, oh my God, I'm no good, now they're repeating to themselves over and over, I'm just as good as everyone else. I can succeed. I can do this. No, that's good. That's a good statement. But if you're just doing that mechanically, and just because you kind of, quote unquote, have to, you're just saying something. There's no emotional weight to it. You don't actually believe it to your core. You're just repeating the words. It's a mantra. And in my experiences, mantras don't work. If I'm just telling myself every day I'm getting better and better, it's words. So the way to get yourself to start believing that is to use logic. If you have the belief that I'm not good enough, well, let's look at that. Why aren't you good enough? Aren't there things that are good about you? Or, maybe there's a specific talent that you have. Maybe you're very intelligent. Maybe you're very well read. Maybe you're the type of person who's extremely empathic and very understanding of others. I'm going to roll with that example because I consider myself to be very empathetic. I'm very understanding of other people's problems. So if that's you, then you can think, all right, well, if you're that way to begin with, more than likely you're helping your friends. You're being supportive when they need you. You're listening. You're helping people through difficult situations. So clearly, if you're doing all that, is that a bad thing? Are you a bad person? Are you no good? Clearly there's value there. If you can help others, that's extremely valuable. So, that's how you start breaking it down. You have to ask yourself, well, is this belief true? And logically go through why it might or might not be. And it sounds cliche, but you have to start to tell yourself that, I can do this. I can handle this. And give yourself examples. What have you overcome in the past? Everyone's overcome something, certainly. And, we all have. All right, it's somewhat of a simplistic explanation in some ways, and I'm coming up on the 12-minute marker, as I mentioned in other videos. If you only have a certain amount of subscribers, you can only have a certain amount of time. So I hope this was helpful. Like I said, this is a very big and difficult subject to cover, even in 2 videos, 24 minutes, whatever it is. So please, again, guys, like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next week. Thanks.